Well, hello, that's me again. Today is October 1st, and it's the end of the weekend. It's Sunday. But I wanted to give you some food for thought for the coming weeks because what we observe is definitely something very special. And before we go, let me show you something, and for you to understand what this will be about. This will be about the formation of humans as their, basically receptacle for their both high culture and morality. And I'm talking about culture not just merely as the obviously fine art or our outwardly behavior, for example. Nobody, pardon my French, farts at the table. And you have to behave yourself properly. It doesn't matter and it doesn't mean that you have to always try to and drink a very expensive scotch. That doesn't make you a cultural man. But obviously, starting from the outwardly appearances and ability to respect others to obviously moral qualities of yourself. As the human being, in my particular case as a man or as a woman, being man of at least some honor, of some principles. That's what culture is. It's our behavioral matrix and how we interact with the world. Sometimes this interaction takes actually a sacrifice from you, and you pay dearly for your principles, but you still remain, in this particular case, a cultural person. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have this kind of, outwardly shallow shining about ourselves. Of course, as I already stated, nobody appreciates people who, pardon my French, they stink, they don't use cologne, they wear the drab, basically clothes and things of this nature. That also matters. But in the end, part of our structure, so to speak, as cultural people, is part of it, not all of it, is delivered by the environment from which we grow up. And of course, primarily that being our family, which brings us up. And then, of course, we have the school, but there is the cultural environment, milieu, so to speak, in which you grow up and in which you observe the outwardly representation of the culture, including your national culture. For example, even the complete jerks and, dumbers in Russia know who Pushkin is or who Tolstoy is, because it's the part of the Russian national culture. And here is what I want to show you. As you can see yourself, this is the St. Petersburg, and there I cannot even explain to you the beauty, stunning beauty of this city, which is admired all over the world, and which has been actually declared number of times the best tourist destination in the world. Not anywhere, in the world. Even before sanctions, but guess what? I just fresh from St. Petersburg. It's still humanity moving in hundreds of thousands along its avenues just to be there and experience the city. And they range anywhere from, obviously, from Arabs to Chinese to other Asian people, and still a lot of Europeans. That's St. Petersburg. That's obviously Catherine Palace at St. Petersburg, and we have, of course, the St. Petersburg with its amazing canals. And if this hasn't been enough, of course, we have Moscow. And Moscow, this together with St. Petersburg is always top three, is the best cities in the world, and I cannot even explain to you the scale and the magnificence of Moscow. And again, when you look at St. Petersburg, Moscow, or for that matter, other places like Sochi, for example, in Russia, you are brought up within the incredible and magnificent representation of Russian culture, be it imperial, ancient Russian culture, from Tsars, Ruriks, and we're talking about, places like which have been around since 12th century, for example, to obviously Petrian times, and Romanovs, and of course Tsars, and the modern Moscow, St. Petersburg are extremely modern, advanced, highly digitized, computerized cities. So basically, when you grew up with this, what becomes of you? Oh my gosh, you have indeed the cultural almost archetypes. Russians have the cultural archetypes for St. Petersburgers or Leningraders, as they call, or of course Muscovites, or of course somebody, of Yekaterinburg people, So you have this representation of people who bear or carry this common denominator about the beauty of their places. And as a result, there is no even, how you can argue with that when, for example, Hermitage in St. Petersburg is one of the top 3 greatest museums ever in the world. We're talking about, of course, the Louvre and Prada being the other 2, although Prada still could be, discussed in terms of its significance. But Hermitage it's stunning. And many people go there not just to look at Rubens or Leonardo da Vinci or incredible Russian artisans. They go there just to take in the incredible beauty and opulent insides of this incredible palace. And St. Petersburg has I don't know how many of those palaces. And when you look at this, that means what you also are subjected to the type of the behavioral matrices which have been accepted nationally throughout centuries, if not millennia, as the appropriate in terms of how you behave within your nation. Why did I say that? Well, let me put it this way. We can take a look at Mr. Medvedev, and Mr. Medvedev is the guy who really doesn't mince his words. And he basically, I'm glad that he gets, us to this point, and look at this. And he spoke about it today, that the number of idiots in power in NATO countries is growing. One newly minted moron, the British Secretary of State for Defense, decided to move the UK military training of Ukrainian soldiers into Ukraine. That is to turn the British military instructors into our armed forces. Well, he continues with being good targets. And everybody knows the British are already there. And fact is, this whole thing with another moron, Mr. Sunak, who is British Prime Minister, created such a wave that suddenly he runs and, talks about that, no, you misunderstood this, creep, Mr. Schnaps or Shaps, whatever the hell his name is, that he said it's absolutely clear that we do not mean British soldiers will be deployed in Ukraine during the conflict with Russia. Well, good. At least Mr. Sunak, recognized that, those wet dreams by the British military and whatever passes for them for the military professionals or experts are all garbage. And my friend Larry also talks about this. And again, Tony Blinken, Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau proved the great Sam Cooke was wrong. And he's talking about the ignorance does not make this a wonderful world. I wish Sam Cooke was still alive to witness the recent grotesque butchering of history by Blinken, Johnson, and Trudeau. And he talks about them being clowns. But if you thought that we are talking about the clowns who have been exposed just now, not that I am being original, I spoke about the fact that political elite, so to speak, or rather political parasite class in the West is basically ignoramuses and morons, enough to look at the Germany's government and Mr. Scholz, Miss Baer, or, Frau Baerbock, and especially her extensive knowledge of geography and geometry, or let Mr. Bach, Herr Bach, who is the guy with philosophy degree, who is running the German economy into the ground. So, but when you look at this and you say, well, what the heck is, the St. Petersburg, Moscow, or Sochi have anything to do, with what I just spoke about culture? They have everything to do with it. And here is the issue. Not that we didn't have enough idiots and morons, but look at this. Mrs. Condoleezza Rice, former Secretary of the State and National Security Advisor, she is basically given the lecture in some yet another gathering of the ignoramuses on September 30, and she speaks about it that Russia is a declining power ruled by homicidal maniac who surrounded himself with idiots and drunks. This is the level actually of American political science. There are some exceptions, make no mistake, and the graduates of the international degrees. In this particular case, Condoleezza Rice graduated Denver State University, where she got her both bachelor's and actually PhD in international relations. That means, and in political science, pardon me, political science. That means she has no legitimate education whatsoever. It's basically political science is the collection of the random facts, the way it is taught primarily around the world. And so if you are a cultured person, it might help you to kind of, expand your horizon a little bit. But if you have been like her, never subjected to such places like, which she hasn't been, to such places as St. Petersburg or Moscow, she doesn't understand Russian culture. She tried to speak Russian. I heard her trying to speak Russian. It's horrible. And the point is, that's the lady who has been in the top political post in the United States, and she obviously switched from Democrats to Republican, and she continues to teach what passes for some kind of the legitimate subject, which is the political science, which it is not a legitimate science degree. So, but the fact that the way she exposes herself here, it tells you not only she's frustrated, which she is, but that she's, as it is true for 99% of the modern Western elite, she's highly uncultured. She is the lady who doesn't understand what Russia is. She has no relation to Russian culture whatsoever. She obviously imbued primarily this garbage through the intelligence, so to speak, Russia, and she probably feels very, very silly, and she has a complex of inferiority when she was visiting the same Moscow, St. Petersburg, because the amount of culture concentrated just in those two. Believe me, Russia has many more of the cities which incredible culture, and I'm talking about the high culture and high morality in terms of the how expressed in the humane and humanitarian attitude towards other peoples. She felt complex of inferiority. Now she has to live in this delusion, because she should understand that no matter how she tries, and make no mistake, I have nothing against Denver. I've been to Denver a long time ago. It was a beautiful American city. It was clean. It was nice. Not anymore, obviously, but Colorado generally, as American Rockies and basically, especially American West, it's one of, if not the most gorgeous place naturally in the world. But no American city can stay near Moscow or St. Petersburg, which are the enormously important world cities. They are places of a very high culture and high art. And so, yeah, Denver, for all my respect, I mean, you know what, it just doesn't measure. Neither does, for example, New York, which compared to Moscow is a crap hole. It's dirty, it's unsafe, and so, yeah, whenever people, get to those ratings, I mean, please, I mean, London, it's not even serious, except when you get people away from those touristy, so to speak, trails. There you go, you have a pretty much the same crap hole, which most of the European cities, especially Paris, which everybody knows, everybody testified the fact that it's dirty and it smells like urine. So, I mean, yeah, forget it. I mean, this is declining power of the West, and how it is represented through its culture and outwardly culture, and especially which is manifested through its cities, which are dirty. And we are talking about not just being dirty, that a fact is that they are extremely unsafe, the crime rate is horrendous. Now we have obviously Stockholm, and people just keep mum about the fact that Stockholm now has, Sweden has now army deployed in their cities because their, crime rate is through the roof. Well, there you go, you wanted it, you voted for that. And Condoleezza Rice exposed herself as a, pretty much primitive provincial lady from Birmingham, Alabama, where she was born. She was never subjected to this really incredible high culture, which, by the way, you cannot find in the United States. Even, National Gallery in Washington, D.C., do you know the history of it? Well, it started with a number of the American millionaires buying a lot of basically the pictures and other art units, so to speak, from Russia, especially after revolution of 1917, and that's how actually the high level European culture has ended up in the United States. New York has nothing in terms of high culture against St. Petersburg or Moscow. So it's not even, I mean, it's not even funny. It's not the same league, so to speak. And this is what you have. So what do they do? Especially those American, so to speak, elites, which always, promoted their otherwise, mediocre Harvard political science or humanities degree. Harvard, for example, is known primarily for excellent STEM, excellent medical school, and law school. The rest of it, it's garbage, basically. The same as it's pretty much every humanities degree in Ivy League is garbage. They teach crap, basically, the international relations, the way they're taught, so to speak, or rather not taught, but propagandized in the United States is funny. And again, you will not find anything comparable in terms of high culture in this particular case to what used to be Europe, obviously, if we talk about Milan or Paris, and even London at some point of time, not anymore, but let alone the magnificence of the globally important cities such as Moscow and, for example, and St. Petersburg. And there is no denial that they are globally important cities. And Moscow being actually the capital of one of the three superpowers. So there you go. United States doesn't measure up to this in this particular respect. It has obviously its own charms and parts which I, for example, love. I am what is called, if you would describe me today, I'm a classic one-story American. I believe American towns and villages, so to speak. I love this one-story America. This is where real America is. This is where a real American spirit survives still. In terms of its coastal cities, they're all garbage. Basically, they all. You can make some photos of the here and there, and it will be impressive. It is the same like skyline of New York. Nobody cares about it. It's nowhere in terms of the height, actually, with the. Obviously, if we go about the height with Shanghai and obviously Dubai, although Dubai culturally is basically nothing more than just one huge concrete and glass shopping mall, but still, they are much higher, for example, than New York. And so once you remove that, what do you have in New York? Metropolitan Opera? Well, guys, you know what? Look up the Marinka or Bolshoi Theater and compare this to that, let alone La Scala in Milan. And so this is where it all comes down to. American elites, they have huge complex of inferiority. If you think so that I imagined this, no, it's not true. It was already noted in 1837 by Alexis de Tocqueville, who wrote this famous basically treatise which called America, basically Democracy in America. And anybody who read it, they will understand that he nailed it, because it continues today, and you cannot buy yourself a history. And America got into the competition with the much older civilizations here. And as such, it doesn't mean that America is not a great country. It certainly is. America is a superpower still, albeit very declining, and having basically, if you rephrase Mrs. Condoleezza Rice quote about Russia, so it's, you can see, basically apply it to the American elites. But it doesn't take anything away from the talent of American people for their achievements, some of them absolutely magnificent. So, and after all, as I already stated, there is America which I love, dearly, which is, in some respects, is better than, for example, Russia, let alone Europe, which is basically already have been, brought to naught. So, and that is what is so important when you talk about this. And going back to the culture, and especially high art, so to speak, we go back to, obviously, military issues. And Mr. Medvedev, this guy, former Russian president and number 2 in Security Council of Russia, he spoke 2 days ago about the fact that, when celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the LDNR and other republics joining Russia, said, no, it's not over yet. We will be basically attaching more areas or regions of former Ukraine to Russia. And now you are left with basically trying to figure out what kind of the regions he's talking about. Obviously, Nikolaev and Odessa come to mind. What about Kharkov? I don't know. Don't ask me. I definitely don't have the connections in the general staff, and even if I had them, I wouldn't tell you. Or I would tell you and had to kill you after that. So that's what the kind of the conclusion on this issue we can make. So, but I want to also get to back to the issue of the Western militaries. And Western militaries paraded themselves, and we know now that, I mean, it's really funny, it's really pathetic, and we know that there is a panic inside Pentagon after seeing how the whole NATO best ever, whatever have been created, is being burned. But I can tell you one thing. When we talk about the issue of the military, the way they plan military operations and the way what is called the procurement policies, it is a total failure. It is a catastrophe, basically. And many people, not just me, will talk about it, that basically at this stage, you cannot take seriously whatever the actions they try to do or whatever they try to employ, so-called on the battlefield, other than the PR, because there's nothing left for the PR. And kind of in conclusion of today, kind of slightly shorter issue, I would have to say that I think so the issue of the high culture, and I'm talking about already in the terms of the morals and in terms of the values we propose. For example, in U.S. military is pretty much done. It's been completely, how to put it politely, I mean, drowned in the wokeism, and they took it. They took it. There was nobody who would go on the record, and except for people who are former military, but then again, they risk very little when they go and say this. And there are not many, whistleblowers who came out and said, you know what, we are having our armed forces killed. So now, if anybody now thinks that, and there are some kind of opinions being raised that United States will end up putting the boots on the ground in Ukraine, good luck with that. And as I already stated, this is the only option the Biden administration has, because essentially they lost the war. And the latest data which flows from Ukraine, I mean, yeah, there is nothing left there. And even the most, people like Julian Ropke, jihadi Julian Ropke, I mean, this German lowlife who passes himself for journalist, he admits now Ukraine doesn't have personnel anymore, that they don't have the people to throw into this meat grinder. So, okay, yeah, we'll see what's going to happen after that. And, this was the kind of my first conversation with you guys starting this month of October 2023. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. I would really appreciate it for you doing this. And so what can I say? Have the nice rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.